You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
We'll go back to the text board in just a bit at 609-403-0973, theplaysugarhouse.com. Text board joining me right now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. You can follow him on Twitter at FBallGamePlan. Check out the YouTube channel where he covers everything from the NFL to college football to fantasy football. You probably also seen him recently on CBS Sports HQ, or as someone I know, saw him actually in Atlantic City doing those live hits for CBS. He is the one and only Emory Hunt. A little bit of this, a little bit of that when it comes to the NFL and college football. Emory, how you doing on this Monday?
Doing fine, Josh. As always, I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you jumping on, and I got to start with you off the topic that's been a very heavy topic, at least for us here at 97.3 ESPN. I think anybody who has two eyes has been critical of Carson Wentz and his play. And I know for me, I've called him stubborn, and I feel like some of his play is egotistical at times because he has this attitude of he thinks he can make plays and is of no consequence. What is your analysis of Carson Wentz right now in year 5 after the first half of the season?
You know, I feel like Carson Wentz, even going back to his rookie season, I feel like he is always trying to live up to what people expect him to be instead of just playing his game. When you go back to North Dakota State and you watch what he was able to do, just be a function of the offense. Hit his passes when he had to hit them, take off and run when he had to take off and run. Be the plus one in the run game when it was called for. Be a guy that can beat you with his arm at all levels of the field when it was called for. But I feel like once he got to the NFL and everyone around him is talking about him as John Elway or, Dan Marino or some of these elite quarterbacks, he gets it in his head that he has to go out there and prove that he can be that instead of just playing his game. When we saw him play his game, i.e. the back end of last year, you saw him feel a little bit more comfortable playing himself and have the Eagles in position to get to the playoffs like they did last year. And I think at times this season you saw him play his game. When he stops trying to be what everybody wants him to be and is playing like Carson Wentz, he plays his best football.
So how do Carson Wentz and the Eagles get back to what we saw at the end of last year? Because if it's in him, if he's able to do those things, how does he get from being the guy who doesn't scan the field and stares down a receiver and throws an interception to being the guy who was going through the reads, taking the checkdowns, and doing everything that needs to help the team win?
Even if he wants to just take the checkdowns, that's fine. That could be something that can get you in a groove early. As a quarterback, you're getting rid of the football quickly. It's coming out short, quick, and it allows your playmakers to do things after the catch. Then you get the time in the pocket to then go to the intermediate level, to the deeper level down the field. So it's all about him realizing that he can be a function of the offense and not the offense. And, trust that you have some talent around you. You may not have the name brand talent. You may not have Frosted Flakes, but you do have Frosted Crisp. You know what I'm saying? It still tastes like Frosted Flakes. It may not be the name brand, but you have guys that can get the job done. As you've seen throughout this season when guys have stepped up and in the face of injury and played well. That's how you get a Travis Fulgham. That's how you get Greg Ward out there stepping up. And, so I think Wentz does have the opportunity to right some wrongs, so to speak. I still believe they are the favorite in this division. It's just about him just playing safe football, playing complementary football. And when the situation calls for it, then you turn that switch on and then you become Carson Wentz, the superhero as far as what we saw down the stretch in that Giants game.
Some people have asked, and I want to ask you because you watch as much game film, if not more than anybody that I know. Is Carson Wentz, has he hit his ceiling, or is there more growth for him beyond what he is?
I think he's hit a ceiling, and that's not a bad thing per se. I just think that, expectations have to taper to what people expect a lot of players to come. For me, if you are a senior coming out of college or you're a redshirt junior, you have hit your ceiling. It's these, redshirt sophomores, these true juniors that have come out, especially at certain positions, they still have room to grow. Or if you're a small college guy coming out, but, when you're a senior, redshirt junior, having 4 years or more in college football, you have maxed out your ceiling growth, potential. Now, the team around you can continue to grow, but you as an individual player, which you are in college, essentially, you're going to be in the NFL.
Emory Hunt joining us here on the Boardwalk kind of hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at FBallGame. Plan for all your NFL and college football and fantasy football analysis. You mentioned a little bit earlier Travis Fulgham. I got to ask you, you're someone who scouts every level when it comes to the college football world. And for the Eagles, there's this conundrum. Yeah, you got to give them credit for finding Travis Fulgham and Greg Ward and Boston Scott and finding ways to get them in here, make them productive. But this is the same team that missed on Nelson Aguilar and looks like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside isn't going to work out. So how does one balance critiquing an organization like the Eagles who's able to find these no names, but then with the first and second round picks, those aren't working out?
Well, I think it's about giving guys time and not buying into the pressure of, what the naysayers are saying. Look at how the media, really the Philly media, jumped down the throat of Nelson Aguilar to the point where he got into his own head, was depressed, and that affected him. And he talked about that depression, and now look at him in Las Vegas with the Raiders. So he's always been the same guy. Even the spark he had during the Super Bowl run in Philly, he showed there that he can be the guy, but it's always about when he has a bad play. A lot of people in the Philly media, print, radio, television, they tend to chop him down to where they make him a joke, they make him a meme, and fans get on board with that, and they start to do the same things to where now he hears it in his head and he's thinking about he's pressing too hard to make a play. And so I see the same things with Arcega-Whiteside. He's still a very good player. He's a really good prospect that they were able to grab. You saw it with Zach Ertz, before he became the Zach Ertz in this offense. So I think people really need to just allow these guys to work through mistakes. The talent is still the talent. It shows you that they are able to identify talent. It shows you that they are able to develop talent. I was on this show, your show, I want to say back in the summer, and I talked about the Eagles and the talent that they have on a roster, and I got flamed for saying that they did a great job of developing talent. And we see that now playing out with Travis Fulgham, being able to get a guy into your program and have him be a star right away. So we know the Eagles coaching staff knows what to do with talent. They are able to identify guys at the top and also guys at the bottom. It's just about being consistent, which Fulgham has been, but also allowing guys, let's say like Nelson Aguilar, to work through a couple of mistakes if that situation arises.
Now, you mentioned earlier, Emory, the Eagles are the favorite, as most people believe, to win the NFC East. But we just saw the Giants take out what most people thought was the only other competition the Eagles had this past Sunday in the Washington football team. So what do we read into this Giants team? I mean, Joe Judge, most people didn't know who the heck he was before he got here. People questioned his hiring of Jason Garrett, Daniel Jones. People have mixed opinions about him. Saquon's out for the year. So what do we read into this Giants team as the Eagles have to prepare to face them again this coming Sunday?
If the Eagles change their name to the Washington football team, the Giants would definitely win that ball game, because that seems like the only team they could beat is Washington. So what I like about the Giants, and what has been the underrated story, is their defense. Their defense has gotten better every game and has and will continue to get better, because they're going to start getting guys back healthy. Obviously, they'll be without Lorenzo Carter for the year and O'Shane Ximines, but the guys that they have there now is doing a great job of turning the ball over. They're slowing down the run game. They're making plays on the back end. They're playing as a unit. Offensively, it's always going to boil down to Daniel Jones and whether or not he can protect the football. Now, yesterday he did a great job of not turning the ball over, which was only the second time in his career of not turning the ball over. Can he do that against Philly? We saw him have issues in that regard in the first matchup. So the biggest battle in this one will be the Philly offense versus that Giants defense, because we know the Philly defense will do a good job of pressuring a guy like Jones and putting him in a situation where that ball may come out.
Let's touch on a couple other things around the NFL. I'm watching that Kyler Murray versus Tua Tagovailoa game yesterday, and all I kept thinking is, for as talented as these guys are, these teams are using these guys completely differently. I'm watching Kyler Murray basically run a power quarterback run on fourth down. I'm seeing Tua, go through the motions and, kind of processing information before he makes the right throw. It seems like that both of these teams are saying we understand what these quarterbacks are good at, and we're going to accentuate those abilities.
Yeah, it's all about, and that's just coaching one-on-one. Coach to your strengths. Coach to what the guys can do well. And at the end of the day, if you're putting a guy, let's say like, Tua in a situation where he's not using his strength in RPOs, or you're not allowing him to get outside the pocket and throw on the move, then you're limiting him as a player. So I love when coaches are able to do what you're supposed to do as far as coach to the guy's strengths. So that's why you're seeing Arizona play well. That's why you're seeing Miami play well. That's why you're seeing Baltimore play well. Buffalo, playing well with Josh Allen. You allow these guys to do what they do best and build around that, and you're going to have success. That's simple football.
So if those teams are doing that, what is going wrong with the Jets and Sam Darnold?
I think, first of all, Sam Darnold has to stay healthy. Every time I look up, he's missing games. You want him to stay out there, because when he's out there over the long haul, he's shown that he can improve every game. And the problem is we're seeing him not, be out there consistently. He's missed games in every season he's been in the NFL. And you have to factor in they don't have a legitimate run game to really take some of the pressure off. The coaching staff is definitely not the best to get to maximize the players. As you saw many players jettison that program and go out to other places and have success. So you have a lot working against him. He obviously has to play better, but he also has to stay healthy. Otherwise, he's hurt himself and the team as a whole.
As of right now, on November 9th, 2020, who is Emory Hunt's NFL MVP winner?
I would say Patrick Mahomes. He is playing at a ridiculous level. It would have been Russell Wilson, but Russell Wilson has had back-to-back games with bizarre interceptions, multiple interceptions. Josh Allen was up there, but he took a step back in a 3-week stretch of just playing average football. Now, he played great yesterday against Seattle. I mean, he was lighting them up, like it was 4th of July. But you look at Mahomes, he's been the most consistent all season. He's been playing great. I want to say he only has 1 interception on the year. That's unheard of with the amount of times he throws the football and the distance that he throws the football. Yeah, you can have that stat line if you're throwing all checkdowns. He throws down the field. He legitimately works touchdown to checkdown and only has that 1 interception. And he's again, Chiefs are 8-1, I believe, and they're playing ridiculous football, and they got the best player in the NFL, in my opinion.
Emory Hunt joining us here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you follow him on Twitter and on YouTube, F-Ball Game Plan. Of course, he is the czar of the playbook. You can catch him on CBS Sports HQ as well as Sportsline and more. Emory, 2 college questions for you before I let you go, and I always appreciate you jumping on. First of all, I got to admit, and I said I would admit this on Saturday, and I'm going to admit it right here, and I've admitted on Twitter as well, I was wrong about Notre Dame. I thought they were a paper tiger. They came out, and I think they had one of the biggest wins they've had in a long time. They proved to me and everybody else who doubted them that they are a legitimate football team. So for people like me who looked at their games and looked at their schedule and doubted them, what was the biggest reason why they beat Clemson on Saturday night?
Ian Book, man, the way he played in that fourth quarter and in overtime was huge. And that was the biggest question everybody had coming into the game, whether or not Ian Book would be able to help generate those splash plays. They needed about 2 to 3. They got one in the opening play of the game with Kyron Williams breaking off a long touchdown run. But Ian Book playing well in the passing game and finding targets, working the ball down the field with his arm and extending plays with his leg. We knew he can scramble and run, but we wasn't sure about his ability throwing the football. And that right there was the biggest reason why they had the success they did, because Notre Dame's defense was giving up some big plays, and their defense, ended up winning the game in the second overtime. But throughout the game, I mean, they gave up 40 points. But Ian Book's ability to respond, to capitalize on the opportunities that presented themselves, and to really showcase his ability as a passer, especially situationally, third down and also inside the red zone, that was the biggest key. And I don't think Clemson expected him to really answer the call, and they got caught, with their pants down, so to speak, in that regard, because Ian Book really beat them this past weekend.
And sticking with the quarterbacks, I want to ask you a question about two quarterbacks that have had a lot of eyeballs on them. They both played on Friday night. Zach Wilson and Eric King. Both are phenomenal talents, both are phenomenal players. But some people can argue BYU's opponents, 22-28 this year, not the same quality level of competition they would have had if it wasn't for the pandemic. So who really is the better quarterback? Is it Wilson or is it King?
That's an interesting question because I think they both do things really well. Obviously, King has a little bit more, I guess, skins in the wall for having done it at two different programs, and also is doing it at Miami, and he's doing a good job this season considering he got there in the spring, and we know how truncated this offseason has been. Wilson has done it, in his own right, done well because last year he was banged up, and we saw him, win that game against USC last year, but they played inconsistent. This year he's balling regardless of who they're playing. You could only play who's on the schedule. He could have easily gone out there and stunk in those games or played mediocre. But he has risen to the level of the occasion every week, and they're winning impressively, and they are entertaining. So, I guess to answer your question, I think both guys are playing about as good as they are playing, and that's why we're seeing both teams in the top 10.
He's Emory Hunt. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at FBall Game Plan, on YouTube, Football Game Plan, NFL analysis, college football, and, of course, can't forget about that fantasy football analysis as well. As all guests, he appear on game night on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Emory, always appreciate the insights, the analysis, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me on.